All right, let's talk about the basic must-knows for purchasing an acoustic guitar. So this is just going to cover, we're not going to go into too much depth, but what you're going to learn in this lesson is going to help you walk into any store and make the best purchase. When I'm instructing my students to purchase a new guitar, I typically tell them there's 2 or 3 things that are the most important. First off, how much money do you have? If you have $100, it's obviously going to limit you in what you can do. $500 or $1,000 or $2,000, all those different tiers are going to allow you to play a lot more instruments and have more breadth of possibilities. Okay, so first off, you probably have a dollar figure that you can afford. I would say get that dollar figure, and if you can go just a little bit above it, then sometimes you can eke into a guitar that may be a lot better for you just because it was a little bit more. Okay, not always the case, so don't let money be don't let that be the main variable. It's good to know how much you want to spend before you go into a store, so you're not talked into something that may not be a better instrument. So know your price. That's the first thing. The other 2 really important things are feel and sound. Okay, so if you remember 3 things from this lesson, it's price, feel, and sound. Okay, don't worry about brand names or anything like that. Those are things that do matter, but what matters most are those 3 things. Okay, so let's say you walk into a store and you have $500 to spend on an acoustic guitar, and they're talking to you about woods and everything else. Forget that for a moment. Okay, that's higher level stuff that we'll get to eventually, but I want you to take $500 and go into your store, your local store, and play any acoustic guitar that's in your price range. Okay, now there may be hundreds of them, so obviously you don't want to play them all, but you want to make sure that you give each guitar in that range a chance, because you may pick something up that's a no-name. Not that this is not a no-name, but you may pick something up that's a no-name and it plays great, okay? And then you may pick up, a Gibson or something wonderful, and that guitar is just not set up right, okay? So really important to try those in the different ranges, or in your range, okay? Feel, let's talk about that for a minute. So on an acoustic guitar, you have different body sizes. This is a jumbo body. There are parlor size, which are much smaller than this. And then you have dreadnoughts, which are your basic kind of country and western looking acoustic guitar. Okay, the ones that are slightly smaller than this. Those are your 3 basic types. So you might want to, if you're a smaller person, a jumbo guitar may be too big. Just feel is going to be really important. So put it on your lap, see how it feels. If it's too big, move on to the next one. The string action is also important. So you want to make sure that it's not too high, so that when you're playing your chords, you're having a problem. Okay? So action is really important. Tone. When you're playing it, make sure, if you find 3 guitars that you love and the fits right, and you like the way it looks and the price and everything's in your range, all that good stuff, then make sure that you get a guitar that sounds good. You may say, well, I don't know what sounds good. That's okay. Then go with your gut, okay? Because really that's what it's about. If someone has to tell you this one sounds better, then it's probably going to be so small, or it's going to be something that you're going to have to develop in time. So go with what makes you happy, okay? A little bit more detailed is when they're talking about woods on guitars. This is known as the top of the guitar, the sides, and the back. And so depending on what the wood is, it's going to resonate louder. It's going to have a nicer tone and that sort of thing. So make sure that when you do check out your local store and talk to your folks there, have the salesperson educate you a little bit about it. That's what they're getting paid to do. So have them educate you a little bit about the difference between a plastic nut and a metal or bone nut. the thickness of the neck, the types of woods, and all that good stuff. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And bottom line, when you walk out of that store, if you're going with an acoustic guitar because it has a picture of a rose down here and not because it feels good or sounds good or plays good or all the above and is in your price range, then that rose is not going to look so good in a few months when you just hate your guitar. So make sure that you really take the time and go with what your gut feels, because chances are you're going to be happy with that instrument. All right, let's learn about choosing an electric next. Let's talk about choosing and purchasing an electric guitar. So if you've watched the video on choosing an acoustic guitar, those same principles will apply to an electric. We'll cover them real briefly, but then there's some additional things. So, of course, when you're purchasing an electric, you want to make sure that you have a specific price range, that you're trying everything in your price range. You want to make sure that the feel of the guitar is good, the action, and that sort of thing. Now, the action, remember we said the height of the strings to the neck, that's your action, can a lot of times be adjusted on an electric. It can be adjusted on an acoustic as well. It's a little bit more of a difficult procedure, but it can be done. Okay, so just because the action on the guitar might be a little bit higher does not mean that all is lost if you fall in love with the guitar for every other reason. Okay, but action is an important thing. So ultimately, when you walk out of the store, you got to either make sure that it's going to be lowered by a technician or that they're going to be able to do it or something like that. So the feel of the guitar is really important. This is a Les Paul. Les Pauls have really thick necks. I'm not a particular fan of thick necks, although I've gotten used to this Les Paul. I love Les Pauls, and I've gotten used to it. Whereas, Fenders have thinner necks. Not right or wrong. It just kind of depends on what you grew up with. I grew up with, thinner necks. So that's what I prefer. So you're going to find that the neck itself is going to feel different. The weight of the guitar, Les Pauls are typically heavier guitars. So, you may want something that's lighter. You may want to put it on, strap it up and wear it and see if it's too heavy or if it feels good. So the feel of the guitar is really important. The tone is going to be huge as far as electrics. Okay, so like the tonal difference of electrics is pretty vast, and that has much to do with the pickups, the pickup selector, the guts and the electronics within the guitar, the woods, all that stuff. But let's not get bogged down with that. We could get into a lot of detail there, but ultimately, does it sound good to you? Okay, and you need to be able to compare this guitar or whatever guitar you're happy with to a bunch of other guitars, so that you're not just, if you pick up an electric and plug it in and play and you hadn't done that before, they're all going to sound good because you've never heard that before and it's a great sound. So make sure you're comparing a bunch of different guitars so that you get the cream of the crop, the one that's best for you. Okay, so tone has much to do with choosing the guitar. Humbucker pickups, that's a name, humbucker, Humbucker, are typically higher gain pickups, and they're found like in Les Pauls and stuff, whereas single coil pickups are found in things like Telecasters and Stratocasters, Fender guitars. And so each one has different advantages, different tonal possibilities. Typically humbuckers are more for heavier music, and typically single coil are more for like pop and blues, and it has a little bit of a more hollow type of sound, whereas humbuckers have a more driven, hard sound. Okay, so as far as your pickup configuration, that sort of stuff is also important. Try out all different guitars, ones with cutaways, ones without. There are semi-acoustics, there are solid bodies. This is a solid body. There are guitars with bolt-on necks and glued-on necks. In this case, this is a glued-on neck because there are no bolts here, whereas I've got several guitars that have, probably half and half. I've got some with bolt-on necks and some with glued necks. Actually, I probably have a lot more with glued necks, but that's just because, not for any specific reason. I have great guitars that have bolt-on necks. Don't let someone talk you out of a guitar because of that, okay? Typically, a glued-on neck usually means that the instrument has more care put into it because it's a harder process, but not always. So go ultimately with, here's the three things again, remember, go in with your price, and it's feel and sound. If you walk out of the music store with a guitar that's in your budget and it feels and sounds great, then consider yourself lucky because you've done your homework and you should be happy with that guitar for a long time. Just keep going. Okay, so let's talk about the anatomy of the acoustic guitar. Okay, so you can kind of think about the guitar like your own body in that this part is called the body, this part is called the neck, and then the head, also known as the headstock. On the headstock, you've got the tuners, which tune the strings. You've got the posts, which the strings wrap around, keeping them snug so that you can tune them. Following down, or actually this is called up the neck, so following up the neck, you've got this, which is a little a cover, a truss rod cover. There's a piece of steel that goes through the entire length of the guitar neck. It's called a truss rod, and it's used for adjusting the pitch of the neck. It's something you really don't want to mess with too much because you kind of got to know what you're doing. I've been playing guitar for a long time and I still don't mess with the truss rod. So anyhow, that's what this is covering now. This is called the nut. Following up the neck, these are called the fret wires or frets. Okay, a lot of people think that the space in between here is called the fret. That's not. The fret itself is that actual piece of wire that's in there. Okay. These are the fret markers, and basically they just kind of let you know where you're at on the guitar neck. So instead of me having to count 7 frets up, I can know by just looking at this that the 4th dot or the 4th marker is the 7th fret. So they're there just to kind of let you know where you're at on the guitar. Same thing on the top of the neck here. You can see there are some markers as well, which tell you where you're at from this angle. Okay, we've got the fret markers, got the frets. This part here, the dark wood on this particular guitar is called the fingerboard. A lot of times that's made of rosewood or ebony. Coming to the body of the guitar, this part here is called the bridge, also known as the saddle. This is called the pick guard, and this protects the guitar from, if you're doing some heavy strumming and that sort of thing, from scratching the surface of the guitar. The top of the guitar here is called the top. Sides are called sides, also known as ribs, but typically they're called sides, and the back of the guitar. So when you hear guitar players talking about a spruce top or spruce sides and back or something like that, they're talking about this specific kind of wood, and they're talking about what part of the wood or what part of the guitar is made of what kind of wood. Let's see, on this guitar we also have strap pegs, okay, or buttons also known as, and then this particular one has a place where you can plug it in right here so that this acoustic guitar can be electrified and plugged into a sound system and that sort of thing. I think that's it. Let's see. Oh yeah, this one also has some electronics on it. So some guitars will have electronics like pickups and that sort of thing. So this one has some extra doodads in it that some guitars don't have, like volume and that sort of thing, treble and bass control. Other than that, that's pretty much the anatomy of the acoustic guitar.